All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 162 today. We're going to be talking about the Codex Gigas and Psychedelics. And you check out our last couple episodes if you haven't already. Two great ones. One we did with Matthew Palmieri, Visionary Psychedelic Experiences, and then one we did with our hometown buddy Adam Bramlage on microdosing psilocybin. Two great episodes. Check those out. And you can check out our website at mindescapepodcast.com. And also, I just put up a new Patreon episode for our patrons at patreon.com/mindescapepodcast. For $2 a month, you'll get exclusive episodes like the one I just put up there. And we also have t-shirts available. So send me an email. Go to our website under Contact Us. Send me an email, and we'll figure out how to get that to you. And one more thing, go to indrasweb.org and sign up to get an alert when the app goes live. It's the app that we created for rational discourse on all the subjects we talk about on this podcast. Me and my buddy who created this thing are holding off a little bit till the media stuff dies down with the election and all that stuff. So once things kind of cool off a bit, we'll go live with that. I just feel like all the air's been sucked out of the room with all that coverage. So, happy Veterans Day to all our veterans out there. Shout out to some of the veterans we've had on the show: Lee Adams, Sean Cahill. Trying to think. I think Tom might have been in the military as well. He mentioned. I think Matthew might have been in the military as well. So shout out to you guys. If we missed anybody, shout out to you as well. Thank you for your service. And what's going on, Maurice?
Not much, my man. How are you?
I'm all right. Just we had some bad weather here the last couple days, so just kind of recovering from that. The electricity was going on and off last night. I know we were going to try and do this last night, so.
Mm-hmm. Well, here we are.
Yeah, I always make fun of you for your electricity, but
I seem to be on quite the weak parcel, I'll tell you that.
I'll tell you what, though, last night I was looking out my window. It was like the news said it was 70 to 80 mile an hour winds. I've never even really heard of that around here before. So
that's nuts.
The rain was literally going sideways. All right. Well, today, we're going to be talking about the Codex Gigas, and people who don't know what that is, it's also known as the Devil's Bible, and it's not called that because it's evil in any way. It just happens that, and we're going to talk about the story here in the legend, but there is it's the first image of the devil known in medieval times or the ancient world, and it's kind of what you would think of as the devil, kind of that archetype. So that's why they call it that. There's a full page illustration of it in there. So
yeah, I actually was under the assumption that it was more for satanic practices, but I learned that that's not the case.
No. And the reason why we're doing this episode is not, the story itself is interesting. The legend behind it, everything about it's super, there's some different facets of that are just really, really fascinating. But there's one thing that caught my eye when I was watching the documentary. I think it was National Geographic did some show a while back, and I haven't been able to find it. I looked everywhere online and on YouTube and stuff, but there was this show National Geographic did where they would do all these different mysteries and stuff like that, and they did one on the Codex Gigas. And they had like experts in calligraphy and, writing and all that stuff, take a look at it and analyze it. And there's some big anomalies, but they pulled up the picture of the devil. That's, like I mentioned, that's what this Bible's famous for. And it looked eerily similar to psychedelic entities, not necessarily ones that I've seen, but in a lot of the artwork that we've seen online and stuff like that. So as you can see, these two images right there, that's a little sampler for what this is going to be about. And the artist, by the way, of the image on the right, the one on the left is from the Codex Gigas. Obviously it looks old, but the one on the right is from a artist named Pavel Suveron, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, and shout out to him. We appreciate it. So
let's get in.
Okay, so You watched a little movie on it, by the way. What did you think just from watching that little YouTube video I sent you?
It's pretty interesting. I don't know how. I don't want to get in too much here because I'm sure you're gonna give some information on the back there. But yeah, it's I was under the impression that the guy wrote it in one night, which there isn't obviously any documentation or any way to prove that that's what happened. But the way that the lettering and everything is so perfect throughout it, that's the big mystery. And if it had to have been written by one person because all the lettering and everything is it's all congruent throughout it. And you know that these historians have gathered that it probably took around 30 years to make. And how did one person do that without a deterioration of their hands or anything like that? So I don't know. Why don't
And
you
he
get
just
into
read
it
through the whole thing. We're done here, folks. Good night.
That's
No,
actually the whole episode. We're gonna sit and read through the book.
That was
It's gonna be a 10-hour episode.
It's a new episode. It's called Maurice's Summaries, where he just summarizes it in 1 minute based on one video that he watched. Okay, so the Codex Gigas in Latin means giant book, and it is literally a giant book. I think it's the largest manuscript known. It's 36 inches, and I think it's even like 9 inches thick, and it weighs about 165 pounds. So that weighs as much as most average people, I would assume.
Right.
It is known as the Devil's Bible again because it contains the first image of the devil. On the left of that page, so on the right page you have the devil, the full image of the devil, and then on the left you have the heavenly city of Jerusalem. And in that city, it's empty, which is kind of a weird thing. So is there symbolism happening there where you're not seeing any angels or God or anything like that? You just see an empty heavenly city. And then on the right, on the page that the devil's on, it has darkened vellum in spots which do not show up in other worn places throughout the Bible. So it's kind of weird that page is more worn and has certain like pigment, disparities that other pages don't have. But then I think I was thinking about this. So maybe more people have touched that page, or it's been more exposed to like UV light or something like that. I would think that maybe that could be a possible cause, or there could be some evil stuff at play too. I don't know. I don't necessarily subscribe to the whole strictly metaphysical evil thing, but we can talk about that too. I want to do a whole episode on that at one point too. Mm-hmm. It was written and illustrated by a 13th century Benedictine monk in Bohemia, which is now modern-day Czech Republic. The author or monk was known as Herman the Recluse. It contains the complete Vulgate Bible, which is a Latin translation of the Bible, as well as other works in Latin. And between the Old Testament and the New Testament, there are selections of other popular medieval manuscripts, including works of Josephus, some medical treatises. It also contains a number of, magical formulae, calendar, exorcism rituals, and a 20-volume encyclopedia. So the main beef of the book is just the Old Testament and the New Testament, but then it's got all these other old manuscripts in there as well. And whoever wrote this book would have to have a lot of knowledge, not just within, Catholicism or the Bible, but just, like I mentioned, all these other esoteric things like magic, spells and exorcism rituals and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
Okay. The book binding is wood boards, and they're covered with leather that has ornate metal fittings with griffins in the corners of the exterior. So I should have probably pulled up a picture of the exterior of the book, but you can look at it online. It's huge, and then the outside and the corners has these really ornate, metal decorations, like I said, of griffins on there. So it's kind of, the outside looks pretty interesting. It contains, I think 310 pages or leaves of vellum, which vellum is pages made from the skin. This one in particular of 160 donkeys. So, I mean, I don't know if they killed those donkeys. That's a lot of donkeys though.
Yeah. It's,
Whew. Send Eeyore run for the hills there.
Yeah, it's a dark day.
Yeah. Initially, there were 320 pages, but nobody knows what happened to, or that says 100 pages were removed. It's supposed to be 10. 10 pages were removed at some point. And I don't know, there's speculation. Some people think that it might have been part of the monk's vows on those pages, or possibly something that he felt was too risky, to keep in there. And then again, it survived the Inquisition, which they thought everything was evil during the Inquisition. So maybe those were taken out then. Who really knows? I have a theory that I'll bring up at the end here.
Well, of course, we want to jump to the crazy conclusion that there's some satanic thing, or there's some magical spells, or even the
it could be magic.
The answer to life,
Yeah, it could be magic. It could be some sort of esoteric secrets somebody found interesting. Like that episode of was it Curb Your Enthusiasm, where Larry rips out like it's like a golf magazine. He rips out a page and puts it in his pocket, and it becomes like a whole thing.
Yeah.
So let's see here. It was written in the calligraphy style of Carolingian minuscule, which fell out of style in the 1100s. So I think they suspect this book was possibly written between 1200 and 1205. So the style that it was written in was already kind of dead in the 1100s. So whoever wrote this was using kind of an outdated style of writing to write it. The book contains blue, red, yellow, gold, and green ink. The start of the book of Genesis is missing from there, which that's kind of interesting. Does that mean that maybe the person that wrote this didn't think that the beginning of the book of Genesis was maybe where they aligned scientifically at that point? If somebody had all this knowledge, they probably had a better idea. Something along the lines of panspermia, or, we're not the only ones here kind of a thing. So who knows? Just speculation. It has two images on one of the pages, has two images representing heaven and earth during the creation, as blue and green circles with the sun and the moon and the stars, and the planets of the sea with no land masses. When this was written was during the time period when the Catholic Church was using the devil as a spiritual punishment if one strays away from God. So maybe that was influential in the person in Herman the Recluse's creating this. Maybe that was in the back of his mind. Maybe, again, it was just something that was common at that time.
Oh, yeah, you got to strike the fear into the people.
Well, I mean, but that's not... Shout out to Martin at the Alchemical Mind podcast, who I see he's in there. He just did an episode on fear and evil. Check out his podcast.
Well, we know that that darkness has to exist for the light, so that's kind of the...
But we've also created those things, and that's why some people will say, well, we're all one thing. We all have a darkness to us.
Right.
Like Carl Jung, like that. We all have some dark piece of us that you kind of sort out. And all right, so let's move on here. Okay, so here's the legend of Herman the Recluse. As the legend goes, a 13th century Benedictine monk from Bohemia named Herman broke his monastic vows. His punishment for breaking his vows was to be walled up alive to starve to death. They were almost done walling him into the monastery when Herman cried out for mercy. He made the impossible deal, saying that he would create a book with all the world's knowledge in one night to glorify the monastery forever. They slid him the supplies through the remaining opening in the wall. At around midnight, he realized he was not going to be able to finish the book. This is when Herman made a special prayer to the fallen angel Lucifer for help to finish on time. The devil emerged from the smoke in the corner of the room and addressed Herman and his prayer. Herman reluctantly sold his soul to the devil in exchange for the completed Codex Gigas, which ultimately saved his life. As a thank you, Herman added a full-size illustration of the devil. Some versions suggest that the devil wrote it and then left a picture of himself as like an autograph kind of a thing. So there's a couple different versions of how that happened. And excuse me, if anybody doesn't know what walled up or walled in is, they used to, they'd put you in a room or like a cell or whatever, and then just like
Brutal.
brick it off, and then you starve to death or whatever, go crazy, whatever.
These people were animals back then, man.
Yeah, that's a real and so breaking his monastic vows. So I looked through different documentaries, I watched a bunch of videos, I read a bunch of stuff. I could not find what he actually did, so there's no actual data on what his offenses were or what could have caused. I mean, back then, again, like you just mentioned, they didn't really probably need that great of a cause to do some horrific stuff. So
I'll cut your tongue out.
Okay, so here's some things that I found that were, from looking a little deeper here. Supposedly, Herman was already a prominent scribe, and people traveled and paid to see his work. So he had done other stuff, and back then there was no entertainment. There's obviously no TVs, and I'm sure music wasn't the best. So people read and wrote and that kind of a thing. So people who were amazing scribes or poets or whatever probably gained a lot of fans and stuff like that. So Herman's name is in the calendar that's in the book, and it is associated with the term inclusus. Now, inclusus can either mean shut in, confined, enclosed, and bound, which is similar to what I just mentioned as suggested punishment was for breaking his monastic vows. The term inclusus could also be associated with the term recluse back then. So that's just somebody that's, doing their own thing, a hermit or somebody that separates himself from society.
Right.
Which would make sense. Other reports suggest that the monastery was too poor to provide the resources needed to complete the manuscript. So a couple things come into play. Is it possible that he completed his magnum opus before he even got to the monastery? Meaning, did he already create this manuscript before he even got there? Maybe he decided to become a monk after, or who knows?
Yeah, that's a good thought. That's a more realistic approach to the whole thing, I'd say.
Yeah. Others have suggested that an amateur scribe made the whole thing, but there's not a lot of evidence to support that. And who's going to use outdated calligraphy, with that precision and all that, so.
Someone of a master of drawing and knowledge created that.
Yeah.
And it was obviously done by one person, so.
Yeah. All right, so here is that the first image of the devil that's found on the manuscript. And again, when I saw this, I thought psychedelic entity. First thing, I didn't even.
When you showed me this, you said, "Does this look similar?" And I was like, "Yeah."
And again, it's not one. I've seen entities more usually of the gray archetype, or like a rainbow being kind of a thing, not necessarily. This, but there's different archetypes in different places you go when you go into the psychedelic worlds, and
it's almost like a Quetzalcoatl-esque.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, the feather plume serpent.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's not a bad point out. And obviously our episodes with Tom Lane in his book, The Search for the Blood of Quetzalcoatl. So again, this page is it's a lot more warm than the other pages. Could it be from UV light or just people touching it more? I assume that this was the prized page back then too, where this is what people made a big deal about back in ancient times or whatever. So,
well, take it in terms as a crazy horror movie that we see today. If someone heard about this, they go, "There's this image." Like you said, there's no movies or anything like that, so good drawings go a long way. So someone sees this thing, boom, now you have this whole image, and word of mouth starts to spread. And
absolutely. Okay, so now here's the image on the right is from an artist. I'll put his link down below the video after we're done. Again, his name's Pavel Suvaran, I believe you pronounce his last name. And we went a little bit back and forth a little bit on Facebook, and I saw the image. I'm like, I want to use this in the episode, so I reached out, and we're always all about permission. I don't use people's images or whatever if they're not aware, whatever. So, but I'm glad I did, because there was more. There was more to the story than just him making this image after a DMT trip. So on the right is Pavel's, his entity that he encountered on DMT, and then on the left again is the devil from the Devil's Bible. Now, obviously they're not exact, but look at the hands. Look at the horns kind of compared to the other horns. I guess you could also say that the one on the right's a little bit more Medusa looking with the hair and the things sticking out. But yeah, I think obviously there's some differences too, but think of this as like the one on the left is like the 1200s DMT entity, and now we have technology and we have all these different archetypes, and our world's different, our consciousness has evolved. So the one on the right's a little bit more of a modern day one.
You know what psychedelic inspired him to draw that?
Yeah, DMT.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So I want to go here. So this is my hypothesis. So after watching the documentary on the Codex Gigas and seeing that image of the devil, again, my first thought was this is a psychedelic entity. After looking into the different versions and legends surrounding the Codex Gigas, I learned that it was written by a hermetic monk who understood alchemy, because there was alchemical texts in there as well. Throughout history, alchemists have had a knowledge of psychedelics and psychoactive elixirs. I believe the devil Herman saw was in fact a psychedelic entity. Check out our episode with author of Alchemically Stoned, P.D. Newman, as he describes how ancient alchemists had intimate knowledge of psychedelics. There are many trip reports of people encountering these entities. We've had, I don't know how many episodes we've done on psychedelics now, probably 30, 40, maybe even 50.
Yeah.
I'd say a third of them. And we've had different people on, and I don't care whether we're talking about DMT, psilocybin, salvia, LSD. People have seen these different entities on all these different psychoactive compounds. So, I've even seen weird things. I've done obviously all those, but I've seen weird entities even on MDMA, which isn't really considered a traditional psychedelic.
Yeah, but there are psychedelic properties to it.
Sure. The depiction of the devil in the Codex Gigas looks similar to the DMT and psychedelic entities I've seen in artwork and stuff online. So I did see some other ones. Again, I wasn't going to just pull artists' renderings and use them without their knowledge. So, but I thought that one was pretty close, the one that Pavel did. So let's go here. So Pavel, I believe is, he said that he calls his piece Heyoka, and or Heyoka the Light Bearer. Heyoka is actually a sacred clown, jester, or trickster of the Lakota people, the indigenous people of the Midwest here in the United States. Lucifer also translates to light bringer. So right there you have two kind of interesting things together, one of them being a jester, and the other half of it being associated with Lucifer. So is it a coincidence that this person created this image that incorporates two parts of the other thing? Meaning that did Herman the Recluse also see this entity? Was it some endogenous chemical release, or was he messing with elixirs? Who knows what was going on? But I just find it interesting that Herman did a prayer to Lucifer and saw that, and then I'll pull up a picture of a Heyoka, which is a sacred clown, and it's very similar to all three of these too. So I don't think that there's a coincidence there. The role of the Heyoka jester in Lakota culture is to help people think deeply about things they normally don't by being contrarian or operating in the opposite fashion as everyone else. So typical trickster, kind of an archetype in that sense. But if you look it up, it's interesting. It's somebody that's doing the opposite thing to bring attention to things, and then ultimately the goal is to make you think deeper about that thing. And that's actually a good thing in a way. And bringing attention to all these different things and the way that they go about it, I like that aspect of it. So tricksters can be a positive thing. Obviously, they can always be a negative thing in some regards, I guess, depending on how you look at it. The artist Pavel also described the DMT trip that inspired his Heyoka Jester as being in hell. So we were going back and forth, as I mentioned. He said it was like being in hell. However, it was not some sadistic pit with demons. He described it as more as being an encounter with a devilish jester who showed him his own darkness and flaws that he had been denying to himself. He said that the shame that he felt was excruciating. It wasn't pleasant, but at the end it was very cleansing and gave him clarity and peace of mind in the end. So I don't believe there's an actual hell. Like, I don't believe that there's some spatial realm that you go to when you die where your consciousness goes to this place and you get tortured. But I believe in the hell.
Annihilation or whatever?
No, I believe in this kind of a hell where you can encounter it in waking life, or psychedelic realms. Like it's a state of mind or a place that you can go, in your mind when things are the darkest. And I think that obviously this person had this profound experience and ultimately was good because it helped him figure some things out. But again, he mentioned it as like being in hell. So, I mean, I don't know if you've ever had an experience like that. I've never had a psychedelic experience like that, but I know other people that have. So obviously it's a very real thing.
No, I haven't really done it enough to. Well, I guess it could happen at any point, but
I don't think it's a matter of doing it more or less or anything like that.
Yeah, but I've also not taken a massive dose of anything either.
Yeah, I think it's when you break through with psychedelics is when stuff like that happens, or if you're not prepared for the dosage that you took and you're kind of like newer to it or something like that.
Yeah.
He also mentioned that all of his other encounters with DMT entities were either funny or educational. So again, this is somebody that drew this thing on their own, and I saw a striking similarity to something else, and there's also more connections there. So again, there's the two side by side. Okay. So on the right, we have the Heyoka Jester, and on the left, we have Pavel's rendition of the Heyoka DMT Jester. See, now, this Heyoka Jester, look at the fingers, similar, if
claws.
The claws aren't the same, obviously, because we got some sort of half machine here that Pavel did, but let's go here. Now look at the similarities between the three. Look at the hands and the feet of the Heyoka Jester. So again, I don't believe that these things, I don't believe that this devil is evil. I believe it's probably some manifestation of the mind. Could it be some sort of archetypal thing? Like at the time, if people were scared of it, and then, did Herman have some endogenous release, or did he have an experiment with psychedelic, and the psychedelic acted like some sort of placebo effect, showing him something that he had already been into, something like that? I don't know.
Well, the possibilities back in those, well, I guess we could do them today, but people would whip themselves to release chemicals in their brain. So we've always been trying to get messed up in one way or another, either taking something or depriving yourself.
I mean, I
of
think
something.
you're talking about the people that do that stuff to themselves, like from Da Vinci Code, that guy that's like following him around the whole time. That it's like
Right.
self torture or something like that.
But like maybe we'll do an episode on it. But the perception, the doors of perception. He talks at the end. He's talking about of heaven and hell, and he's talking about how people have always been trying to release either releasing the chemical in their brain or taking something that will allow them to break through to the next dimension.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people are trying to do now. There's a lot of people trying to induce DMT through Kundalini and different types of like meditation and yoga and all that kind of stuff. So, I think you're right with that in that regard, that people will always try and do some stuff. Now, where did the knowledge come from to try and do something like that? The episode we had when we had Dr. Rick Strassman on, I asked him about that one and the anecdotal evidence of people being in complete darkness for 2 to 3 weeks straight. How I think the guy's name's Montauk Chia, and he mentions, it's on YouTube, you can find the one clip, I don't know, but he mentions inducing DMT through darkness, like naturally produce DMT through your body, for if you are in complete darkness for 2 to 3 weeks. And I asked Dr. Strassman about that, and he said there's no evidence to support that, but I don't know. I guess it's something to look into. Or
yeah, I remember.
I know we're gonna shoot a show where Maurice just sits in the darkness in a cave for 3 weeks, and we're gonna see what happens.
It's very riveting. But I was gonna say, when we were in high school, I remember talking to this one kid. He was like one of the main drug dudes, and we were talking about maybe doing some mushrooms in the weekend. He's like, yeah, that's fun and all, but if you really want to take it to the next level, lock yourself in a car for a weekend.
Oh my god. It sounds horrific. But I know what that person's probably saying though. Like you will go crazy. There's something about it. I know what that person's talking about, because I've been in the car for like a day, and I couldn't stand it. So.
Well, I think his parents went out of town one time, and he like deliberately locked himself in this car, and they took him higher than he's ever been.
Oh, that's crazy. I think that I think when you do stuff like that too, it's just altering your consciousness in general, right? I mean, you don't necessarily need drugs to get outside the normal, day-to-day consciousness, something like that. Like there can be, like I would even consider it kind of negative still, because you're depriving yourself of something, like you could alter.
Obviously, he didn't eat or drink,
Well, I know, but you could alter your consciousness. I mean, there's times where we've gone camping and we're hiking or we're looking at this beautiful scenery, and you feel that same feeling in a way,
Mm-hmm. I also read a thing where they talk about doing it with a lover or someone, and you stare into their eyes for a super extended period of time. I've never personally done it with another person, but I have, and looked at my eyes in the mirror for like 10 minutes, and strange things start to happen.
Yeah, that too. I've done that. Looked into the mirror, into your eyes. Yeah, you start to dissolve. And I also, I forgot. Martin from the Alchemical Mind just commented. I remember listening to one of his episodes where he locked himself in a tent for a couple of days. Yeah, you will go crazy, bro. I mean, what do you think's gonna happen? When we go camping, I'll sit in the tent for 10 minutes, and I got to get out of there. So.
Well, my last backpacking trip, it started snowing, and the temperatures dropped below zero. I sat in a tent from, 3 p.m. till 6 a.m., and I didn't go crazy, but I thought about my entire life. So.
Yeah. But like I said, you're right. People have always been searching for that, and that's the goal, right? Even people that do psychedelics that understand them really well have always had these aspirations for not needing them and achieving those states via meditation or via whatever you want to call it. So,
well, it's a lot easier now that we have a knowledge of the chemicals and things like that, where we can take a couple of mushrooms or the DMT or whatever and get to that point. But then, at the same time, there's people that argue with that, saying that that's the easy way out, and you really need to do the stuff that is not based on ingesting something. And you can go either way.
I'll say this. My observations of when people say, oh, that's the easy route or that's the shortcut, those people usually don't do psychedelics or haven't in a while or something. There's some weird thing there where there's there's a reason why they're saying. I don't think that. Very few people have I met where it's like, yeah, I've done a bunch of psychedelics, but now I just meditate. And that's great. I mean, I want to get to that level too, where you need nothing, but you're just yourself to get to that level. But like I said, online and stuff, it's usually people aggrandizing themselves or talking like they've reached some level of enlightenment, or maybe that they've never experienced psychedelics. So usually people that haven't experienced something will talk about it as if it's less because they don't know, whatever.
Yeah, but don't you think there's some truth to where, let's say, well, because it's happened to me, I've taken like some psilocybin or acid even, and you figure out the meaning to life, but then when you come down, it's gone. I think that's what they're kind of referring to, is if you want that key to stay with you, you have to kind of get there in more of a sober state, maybe. I don't know.
The key of it, here's what the key is. The key isn't sober, not sober, this or that. The key is to draw from these experiences and take something out of it, in my opinion. I don't care if you're taking psychedelics, if you just meditated, if you are playing a sport or whatever, is take something important from the experience. That's, so I don't know. I think that you can take something profound from anything if you know what you're looking for in terms of different altered states. So I don't think necessarily...
I agree with that too, but haven't you had that aha moment, and then when you come down it kind of has
well, here's what
away?
I'll say. There was years where I didn't do any psychedelics, and then I thought the same thing. I'm like, yeah, I know what it's like. I don't need... And then when you do, you're like, oh, I needed that. It was like cleaning out the cobwebs. I'm not saying you have to do it or you should do it, but it's something that in my past and experiences that for me, it's been beneficial. Now, everybody's different, but again, I just think that it's less about how you get there and more about what you're taking from it. So if that makes sense, like if you can get something out of anything or become a better person, whatever, it doesn't matter how you get there. No.
Well, I think it's about sustaining the mindfulness.
Right. As long as you're not being harmful to yourself or others, is my point. Like if you can get to these places, whatever, great. So, all right. I mean, we can go back and forth, but that's a whole different episode. But I honestly, like I said, I see both sides of it, but usually the people on these forums, like if you go on like a Gnosticism forum and you'll have people that have done psychedelics, and then you'll have people that haven't done psychedelics, and the people that haven't done psychedelics, like, yeah, I've heard that, it can have beneficial effects and you can have these crazy experiences, but it's a shortcut. That's what you see from people. You're not seeing, oh, I've done it for 30 years and now I meditate because I've learned, I've very few of those. So that kind of a thing. Okay, so here's some images from the Codex Gigas. I think I don't know what the one on the left is. The one on the left is the beginning of some book in the Bible, I believe. The one in the middle is from the beginning of the book of Matthew, I believe. And I don't know what the one on the right is. But look at how intricate that is. I mean,
yeah.
Herman the Recluse wasn't just a great scribe, but he also, look at this imagery.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, he had a vast knowledge of a lot of different things. He also could draw.
It looks like my notebooks in high school.
Maisie's notebook.
I used to draw. Actually, you've seen my notebooks. I doodle like that actually on some of the pages. I could have been an amazing scribe back in the day. Just give me those inks. And that was interesting too. We just did that episode on Science News recently with the ancient stuff and how the Egyptians used lead in their ink to dry the ink faster. It was like a technique for drying. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Okay, let's go to the next one here. Okay, so on the left, I think is from the book from Josephus, where that's what I was talking about with the planet, where it's all covered in water, I think, and then the one below it, which is all land. So it was talking about, like I said, I mentioned in the beginning. But yeah, so you get some images in there. But interesting stuff. Again, this book's huge. I mean, just think about that. 36 inches long, 9 inches, width, and then it's 165 pounds. You need 2-3 people to just carry this thing around.
Are you gonna get into the fires and stuff?
Yeah. Oh, you're just gonna ruin everything. So you already ruined. I asked you about a little bit about it. You go on this rant where you just named all the facts that you had within the first 5 minutes. Okay, So this is when we get into the curse. There's the curse of the devil's Bible.
Baby.
So it was most likely, again, written between 1205 and 1230 A.D. The Bible was traded to the nearby Sedlic ossuary in 1295 A.D. The Seldic ossuary, where's it, Seldic? I misspelled it. I think it's Sedlic ossuary is the most famous for being decorated with the bones and skeletons of roughly 70,000 people. So you got to look up the Sedlic ossuary, because it's literally decorated with human skulls and bones and everything. I saw a couple pictures of it. It looked pretty brutal in there. Shortly after it was traded, the original monastery in Bohemia was burned and destroyed during a Hussite invasion. So the original monastery that supposedly produced this, again, there's differing opinions on whether the monastery could have even helped produce it because it was so poor, but the original monastery was destroyed after the book left there. So the Sedlic ossuary sold the Codex to a monastery in Prague, where it stayed. I think it was Brevnov, where it stayed until 1594. Okay. So in 1594, Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II took possession of it at age 42. Rudolph II had a fascination with the occult after Nostradamus had a vision that predicted his father's death. So he was around this kind of stuff his whole life.
Well, if you're around Nostradamus, yeah, you're gonna. No, seriously, if you're gonna be around a guy like that, you're gonna be into that stuff.
Right. And Rudolph II had an unhealthy obsession with the Codex, and specifically the image of the devil. So there's even suggestions that he would try and make himself look like the image in the book. So he was kind of crazy. There's some people that said that he actually might have gone crazy through genetics, because there was a lot of inbreeding in his royal family, that maybe he was experiencing psychosis or schizophrenia or something along those lines. He spared no expense bringing the top alchemists, Edward Kelly and John Dee, into his court. So
there you go.
John Dee, if you don't know, big time occultists, and we'll probably do an episode on John Dee and Edward Kelly sometime in the future. So if you're into alchemy and stuff, I'm sure you've heard of those two. So again, this book has been touched a lot of people in some of these circles that are pretty famous. So he was also obsessed with the Philosopher's Stone. We've had, again, P.D. Newman's work with ancient alchemy and all that stuff, and Alchemically Stoned, and a lot of these hermeticists and alchemists back in the day probably knew how to produce DMT, or obviously people have been eating mushrooms forever. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go on that. So
yeah, that might have led him to more insanity if he wasn't stable to begin with and started dabbling in other drugs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, John Dee, like the whole Enochian magic and these conversation, or there being like angels and that kind of stuff. So you gotta look more into that if you're interested in that kind of stuff. He eventually went crazy and lost the trust of his people and died in 1612 after being stripped of all of his power by his younger brother, Matthias. So the Devil's Bible has been associated with a lot of has been a lot of weird things. So again, I'm gonna get into some more stuff here, but just a lot of random events and it's popping up different times in history. So in 1648, during the 30 Years' War, the Swedes found it and took it as a spoil of war. On Friday, May 7th, 1697, an intense fire broke out at the royal castle in Stockholm, and the book was about to catch fire when it was rescued by being thrown out of the window by a few people. The 165-pound book landed on a man who was fleeing from the fire, and supposedly the man survived. But, I mean, imagine a second, third, fourth story window having a 165-pound book drop on you. I mean, you're lucky to be alive, so... Again, there's many instances of illness or weird events surrounding this book. From 1649 to 2007, the manuscript was kept in the Swedish Royal Royal Library in Stockholm. In 2007, after 359 years, the Codex Gigas was returned to Prague on loan from Sweden until 2008, and now it's currently back in Stockholm. There's another anecdote about, I think, somebody that worked in the Swedish Royal Library who, in the middle of the night, books started flying off the shelf, and then the Codex Gigas flew off the shelf, and then they found this person like cowering under a desk, shaking the next morning, like what happened, kind of a thing. So I don't know if you believe that. It could just be an anecdote. Who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to take any of this stuff. Well, it's been such a long time, like, and then the word of mouth gets in, and
right,
all things get misconstrued.
All right, so the mysteries of the Codex Gigas. So you kind of mentioned this early on. So the weird thing is not that the book has a picture of the devil. The weird part is the story of the how it was written and how long it was, how long it took to write. So academics and researchers have inspected and analyzed the book, and they've concluded that the book was completed by one person based on the calligraphy, illustrations, and style. They assert it would take somebody 20 years. Oh, okay, so I found this. So I think it said 5 to 10 years of around-the-clock work, meaning that it would take 5 to 10 years if they were literally writing all day and all night, which nobody could do. So I think they say like 20 to 30 years of nonstop writing for like a normal person's day. Some suggest it would even take 30 years. So that's a long time. I mean, supposedly the Great Pyramid of Giza was built in 20 years. So they're saying this book possibly took 30 years. So,
well, one man.
I don't believe either. So
you thought it was made in the night?
Where did the legend of completing it in one night come from? How can the legend and science used to analyze and theorize it exist in the same universe? So this is kind of where the discrepancies are. So if they're saying that it took that long to write, then how does the legend play into this of him writing the thing in one night? And that's why I mentioned to you earlier on, did he already complete his magnum opus or complete this manuscript before he even got to the monastery and then offered it up maybe to save his life, saying, I'll do this in one night if you let me go, and he already knew he had it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's one of my theories.
But how does he get out of the wall to produce the thing?
He already has it. They probably were going to wall him up. They're probably going to wall him up in his own place.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? His own room or his own whatever.
Do you know the age of how old was he when he was getting walled up?
No, I don't.
Because the whole thing with the book is it's more of a younger man's work, because if you're working on something for 30 years, by the time you're at that 20, 25, 30 year mark, your hands are going to be pretty beat up.
Right.
Unless you're some amazing artist. Again, I don't really know how that works, but if you're doing everything by hand, it's hard to be that precise.
Right. So that's one aspect of it. Was Herman working on the Codex long before he broke his vows? Again, that's what I just mentioned. How the legend could have been intentionally... Okay, so another theory is, what if he had already written it and then used the legend to further it? Meaning that, like, think about authors now. Like, somebody will write a book and then they do, like, a press tour. Although, things sell better when there's, like, a story. Like, there's something salacious about it.
Exactly.
So him creating the legend about it himself... so that's why I even think more in terms of, like, this guy was like a hermeticist. He was into magic. He's like, how can I fool? Oh, I've seen these entities, but they're via psychedelics, and people don't know about those because only, a handful of people around here understand that, or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
he's known forever now because of it. So
yeah, he cemented his place in history. And if you're going to say some amateur wrote it, well, then what would be beneficial of somebody else writing it like that and then giving this other person the credit? That doesn't make any sense. Because Herman's name's actually in the calendar in the back of the Codex Gigas. is it possible that he completed? Okay, I already said that. Others have suggested the amateur scribe thing. I don't buy into that. What was the catalyst for the vision of the devil? Was it psychedelic or was it meditative? Like I said too, I mean, if you're a monk, I'm sure you're really good at meditating and prayer and getting into like that deep state. I could see somebody seeing, I mean, I've seen weird stuff in meditation, not necessarily that, but I've seen other similar weird things.
Yeah.
Deep in meditation. So it doesn't have to be via an exogenous chemical. So, okay. What actually happened? All right. So I believe he spent most of his life working on the Codex Gigas. I would assume that he was a recluse. Let's just say, they said 20 to 30. Let's say he was working fast and he worked a lot of the day and the night. You could say 15 years. I mean, you figure he could have been 20 when he started it or whatever, and then he's 35. Hey, I'm going to join a monastery or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I don't think people lived all that long, so he must have been pretty young when he started it.
Yeah, but I mean, they had, there's obviously the quality of life wasn't as great, but yeah, he was a hermeticist and a recluse. He had knowledge of magic, exorcisms, ancient texts, and esoteric topics that I assume most monks did not regularly dabble in those times, like we mentioned. He probably had knowledge of psychedelics via alchemy and alchemical texts and ancient texts. He may have experienced the devil entity via psychedelics again or meditation. Some have suggested the around-the-clock work on the Codex Gigas also put him in a meditative state. So that was another interesting thing that I read, that working that hard on something and having that much focus on one thing would put you in some sort of meditative state. So, or a flow type state. So yeah, after it took him 20, 30 years to create the Codex, he created the legend around it. Another thought I had was maybe he broke his monastic vows again and then offered it up, saying that, the devil helped him. I also believe that the devil probably saw weird stuff if he was dabbling in that kind of stuff, but again, that archetype, did a psychedelic or some altered state or some endogenous release bring up that archetype, that trickster archetype? I don't know. Like what did he know? I've never read what's in there as far as magic and alchemy and stuff, but did he know about DMT and MAOIs and psilocybin, or was it some that was the other thing I was thinking about too, is like the fear of him, being killed or walled in, would that create some sort of fight or flight or some weird thing happening within the body and chemicals and
absolutely
hormones and all sorts of stuff?
Yeah, you would think.
So yeah, it gets your juices flowing. And if you knew you weren't going to finish and you were going to die, I would assume you'd probably start seeing some weird stuff. The other thought was maybe they did wall him in, and he finished this thing when he was starving and
he had nothing else to do.
Yeah, and they open this thing up. It's just a skeleton, and then the book's completed.
Yeah.
Again, was he an avid meditator, and he encountered metaphysical entities? So these are all questions I was asking himself. Did he disappear into darkness like Da Vinci and come out an ascended master? These are all speculations, obviously.
Well, has magic ever been proven? Because essentially, if we're saying this guy wrote this book in less than 5 years, some kind of magic was involved, and that just has never been the case. There's always some kind of reasonable explanation.
What do you mean magic? In terms of like the devil writing it or whatever?
Yeah, or this guy getting some superhuman ability to complete a, what I'm like, if you said
that's what this whole episode's about, is decoding this thing.
Right.
Because I think, let's say he created it before and then used it to barter for his life. That's magic, and because that's like saying that's like sleight of hand, but it's like sleight of word. Like you have knowledge over this other person, and you're gonna trick them. So that technically that is magic to me. If you're magic right now, just being you, then pulling something like that off is magic.
Mm-hmm.
And magic in real life to this day, like you watch a magician, all they're doing is looking for blind spots in your perception and in your, your what you're observing and your,
Well, they understand how the human mind works.
Yeah, they understand how the mind works. So they know, okay, your mind's not going to pick this up, this move or this move. So, I mean, same thing, kind of, I think. So, yeah, I don't think that there's actually any magical thing happening with the devil. Again, I don't even believe in, like, a hell or anything like that. So, and yeah, you could say the same, like, what's that called? The thing where people, The Secret or what, that thing, The Secret. All that is you're putting all your energy and attention into something. And yeah, of course you're going to complete stuff and it's going to move you towards your goal because you're putting all your attention into something. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like you saying, I'm going to become a photographer. When you first said that to me, I'm like, dude, you don't even take pictures. I've taken more like a photography class and stuff. Like I've done more than you, but now here you are and you're an amazing photographer because you put all your attention, just like this podcast. When we started this podcast 3 years ago, nobody gave it a chance. Even you didn't give it a chance. And I go, I'm going to force this thing into existence. And here we are today. We're doing the podcast. So we have people listening. So
yeah, the mind is a powerful thing.
The mind is a powerful thing. Will is a powerful thing. Passion is a powerful thing. So yeah, I mean, that's just kind of, that's it as far as the,
well, I like your theory of him being, if it's already being written, that makes some sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, he either wrote it when he was at the monastery, so it took him all those years or whatever, or he wrote it before he got there. Hypothetically, too, I was thinking about what if he wrote it and they found it or something, and that was him breaking his monastic vows because there was like magic stuff. And like, I mean, I don't know what the Benedictines saw as cool or not cool with their vows, but I assume some of the esoteric stuff in there wasn't cool. Them, who knows, maybe the pages they ripped out were the pages that he got in trouble for or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we know they have a lot of problems with a lot of things because Jesus' whole life is not documented. So
yeah. I just saw something too on Twitter, some article about the lead plates detailing something about Jesus that they found or something. I mean, again, there's a lot of dispute over whether Jesus was an actual person. I know we've had psychedelic people on our podcast that think he was a mushroom, and we've had other people that think he's just an archetype. We've had other people that think that it's an allegory for our solar system, so who knows? But so what do you think? Going through the whole thing, like what's your opinion on the whole thing?
Opinion of what?
Now, what do you think based on everything I just laid out there for you? Do you think it was some sort of psychedelic entity? Do you think that it was just some archetype that, like people probably talked about it like as a legend, the devil, and it looks like this and it's got horns and this and that, but that devil even kind of looked different because you kind of associate the devil with more of like Pan, with like the hooves and things like that.
Yeah. I could definitely get down with some visions, and I don't know why we all have these same thoughts of entities, aliens or the devil, or is it because that's just the image that's been beaten into us for so long, or is there really something deep down that's producing that image? But yeah, man, I'll get on board with the DMT thing because that does, or some type of psychedelic, because like I said, I think it's maybe a symbol for the old Quetzalcoatl with that serpent face, and that's what I would lean more towards.
Yeah, you pointed that out. That's interesting. The plumed feather serpent, or the feather plumed serpent. I think that you look at like dragons and stuff like that. I mean, who knows? But I just think that a lot of these things can be explained. Here, okay, let me put it like this. You've been alive on this planet, what, 35 years?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen anything insane in real life that we've talked about, like some of the weirder things that we've talked about on this podcast? Have you ever seen anything like any of the weird stuff that we've talked about in your day-to-day consciousness or life?
No.
But you have seen and done weird things on psychedelics, on, in meditation or whatever weird things you've done. I'm sure you've experienced weird things. So,
not to the extent of you, but I've definitely haven't done anywhere near the dosage of you. I've only done 1.75 of the psilocybin.
Yeah,
so
that's nothing.
Right. That's more of the the level dose. So I was there when things were starting to shift around, but I've never, like the stuff that Tom Lane's talking about, that I could definitely see that taking you to a whole new level. And the fact that they all see that same thing, that leaves me to believe that there's something within all of us. And we see it with the use of DMT as well. We all have some kind of collective vision that appears when we dabble in these substances. So there is something locked within us, or it might be dulling the senses, and we're seeing things that are already there at all times.
Yeah, my whole point was that I've never seen. Well, I guess we're still gonna make that video. I haven't gotten around to it; it's just been busy. But of my weird orb sighting with my dad, we both saw this like orb.
Oh yeah.
And this thing just like takes off in 2 seconds. So we'll talk about that's the only thing I can think of in like day-to-day consciousness where I wasn't like even under the influence of like THC or CBD at that point during the day. So yeah, I don't know.
It's just hard for us to put ourselves into that mindset back then because the world was just such a different place. And again, with the mysteries that surround stuff, we talk about it all the time, how history is just one big game of telephone. So you have to kind of pick and choose what's real and what's not. Obviously, this book exists. Well, obviously, one person has written it because I believe that it's impossible to duplicate. There's a reason why people analyze handwriting, because it's all very unique to yourself. So,
yeah. Widow's son also pointed out that monks would have had to have practiced alchemy in order to heal or cure sickness. So, yeah, that's a good point.
And when you're dabbling with that, you're trying to find different cures. One thing might heal, one thing might make you trip, one thing might kill you.
Yeah.
And they don't know, so they're doing all kinds of different stuff.
Right. And even that's why, you look at that, we were talking with Matthew Palomari a few episodes ago. We were just talking about, we're talking about like tropanes and these like datura and like all these crazy ones that don't really sound that pleasant, so, but yet people take them and people have had okay experience, so it's just weird, different reactions for different people and stuff. But yeah, I think again, my whole point with the whole metaphysical thing is even like priests or gurus or whatever, they're meditating, they're deeply meditating. You are altering your consciousness to get to this other thing. I don't ever see anybody that's some like enlightened person that's just like, yeah, I've been in my day-to-day consciousness every day for the last 50 years and I'm super enlightened. It's getting out of this day-to-day consciousness to see that there's more is, I think, the whole point. I'm not saying it has to be via exogenous chemicals, and I'm not saying it has to be strictly just meditation, whatever it is, but I'm just saying getting out of that day-to-day consciousness is, I think, what helps people see and gives people these experiences. Maybe it's lucid dreaming, maybe it's sleep paralysis. Who knows?
Yeah, well said, my friend.
Well, I mean, this is my experience too. I know people have had weird experiences in day-to-day consciousness too. I have just never experienced that. I don't know anybody that's had been completely sober in like during the middle of the day and like some weird insane thing happens, so
yeah. But even if someone says they've seen something in normal day to day, you don't know what's going on in their brain.
Right.
They could have a spike of one thing or another. That's the whole thing. It's everything's so subjective to the person.
Absolutely. So again, that's why I like, where our thoughts are going on this. It's even, you look at like the book The Immortality Key, it gives like a rational explanation. And look, I like weird things. If there's like some weird metaphysical thing that can't be explained, I like that. I want to figure out what's going on there. I love that. That's my favorite thing. But at the end of the day, I'm not just going to believe like some YouTube video, or just I'm going to look deeper. You know, I'm going to figure out what's going on, in my opinion. So, and that's what we implore everybody that listens to the show to do. Don't just.
Is there a known like consensus of what actual like historians believe the book was, how it was created? Or
yeah,
whatever?
they don't know. They just know it was written by one person and that it would take 30 years. So that's why I mentioned the legend of how it was created versus the reality of it are in competition, because there's no way, you know. So.
But again, I like the one theory that the guy just talked it up and pretty much made himself famous because of it.
Right. So. But yeah, Caesar just said it's all chemical reactions, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, what's going on, though, when things are happening, when those reactions are different? Is it our perceptions now allowing us to see more of what's actually part of reality? Or is it, you know, taking our perceptions and warping them or altering them? You know, like, what's going on there? I think that we'll probably get some sort of answers with all the psychedelic research going on.
Yeah, well, I think in our lifetime there's going to be a lot of stuff that emerges.
Well, I mean,
we just have to be patient.
Yeah, I mean, and the serotonin receptors, the 5-HTP2A and all that kind of stuff. So I think we'll figure out at least a little bit more about all that kind of stuff. But
if it's possible to know that there might be mysteries that just will never be answered, and we have to accept that.
Even if they figure out like, oh, this does this, or again, we come to the hard problem of consciousness, which I don't think is going to be solved in even our lifetime. But we'll do episodes. We got some stuff coming up. We've got Super Volcano Part 2. We've got the Eleusinian Mysteries episode that I've been keeping in my back pocket for a little bit, but we're going to pull that out here soon. And what else? I think we got a bunch of new guests coming up, so that'll be fun. And yeah, we love everybody. And if you haven't checked us out on Patreon, go check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/Mindescape Podcast. For $2 a month, you'll get exclusive episodes and content. I just uploaded an extension of our conversation with Matthew Palmieri on there. Also, check out our website, mindescapepodcast.com. I have everything on there. I'm probably going to write another blog here in the next week for our blog. And, yeah, anything else?
Sounds good, my friend. Looking forward to the next one.
Oh, yeah. Check out indrasweb.org. Sign up to get an alert when the app goes live. Again, we're holding off a little bit till all the media dies down a little bit and we can get back to some critical thinking on things like consciousness and altered states and ancient civilizations and all the amazing stuff we talk about on this podcast. So check that out. And I'm trying to think what else. I think that's it. Shirts. If you want a t-shirt, it's a black t-shirt with our logo on the front. And I think if you're in the U.S., probably $35. If you're outside the U.S., we'll have to figure that out. But if you're interested, go to contact us on our website and send me an email.
Beautiful.
And that's it. We love everybody. Stay safe out there. I don't know. We'll try and get another one in this week if Mr. Busy Maurice's schedule allows it.
Hey, man, you canceled for tornado weather.
Yeah, well, you got to do what you got to do.
If the tornadoes don't flow, then there might be a show.
That tornado might be headed towards Maurice's house, and we know his grid is not stable.
Not stable. It all has to do. Literally, the last time it rained for a second and the power went down for a full day.
Yeah.
So thanks, DT.
God coughed, and this kid's internet and lights browned out. So, all right. Well, everybody, stay safe. We love you, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Cheers.